Hello, everyone. So we are now back for part 9 of Justin Baldoni's full deposition transcript. Since I've done part 8, we've obviously had Judge Lyman's order on the unsealing, and we are about to get an absolute avalanche of stuff unsealed. So I'm going to power through the end of this deposition. Probably another 3 parts, I think, maybe a bit more. But then after I've done I'll deal with the new filings as they come in, and then I will do Jamie Heath's full deposition after I've got all of that out of the way. I think that's probably the best way to do it. So, where we were we've kind of finished up on part 8. They were going to a break, but they were talking about the situation in the car, and Lively's claim that she mentioned that her dad owed her $40 or something, and Justin pulled $40 out of his pocket and said, "Oh, here you go. He gave it to me for you." Turned out that's not quite what happened, as per usual. True to form, a completely innocent conversation has been mischaracterized into something creepy. And what actually happened was, Justin said that Justin's kind of version of events was that Lively had made a joke about her dad owing her $20, and he kind of pulled out $20 and said, "Oh, I found $20 in the road," because he had found $20 on the road earlier that day. But he doesn't say he gave it to her and said, "Here, this is from your dad," or or anything creepy like that. It was just that, like, he was making a joke and referencing the coincidence that she was talking about her dad owing her $20, and Justin was like, "Oh, well, actually, I found $20 as well myself." What a coincidence! That kind of thing. It was really quite innocent, but Lively, as always, turned it into something it wasn't. That's according to Justin, obviously. We don't know either way because we weren't there. I know which is the more believable. I'll just leave it there. So they then went on a break, and then they come back. So we're back to Gottlieb questioning Justin. Gottlieb, Mr. Baldoni, yesterday you were asked a question about whether you had done any leadership training. I think you said something about leadership coaching at some point in your 20s. Yes. Was any of that ever with an organization called Landmark? No. Never had any affiliation with, attended any sessions with Landmark Forum? No. Any recollection as you sit here today of who the leadership coaching or training was with? It was a man who I referred to by somebody. It was a man who I was referred to by somebody, just one-on-one. Okay. Back to It Ends With Us. In the course of production on It Ends With Us, did you ever invite the department heads to go to a bathhouse or spa with you? I may have. Do you have recollection of it as you sit here today? Like, in a formal way, like to all the department heads? Any invitation in any form? Yeah, I believe I did. Okay. I'm going to mark a document that's been marked as Exhibit 22. It's a text exchange dated June 15th, 2024. And I'm going to represent to you, Mr. Baldoni, that this is a text exchange between Alex Sachs and Ange Giannetti. Ange Giannetti is the home number that is blacked out there. Why don't you take a look at this, and then I will ask you some questions. Sure. Have you had a chance to look at Exhibit 21, Mr. Baldoni? Justin, I believe this is Exhibit 22. Thank you for correcting me. I'm terrible with the exhibit numbers. Okay, I'll make a note of that myself. Have you had a chance to look at what is marked as Exhibit 22? I have. Do you see in Exhibit 22 on page 2194, which is the first page of the text exchange, Miss Sachs writes to Miss Giannetti at 2:53 p.m. Justin was very dismissive of her when she wanted to direct, and then used Jamie to try to manipulate her when he realized she couldn't. She should co-direct it after she got Daddy-O going. So this is referring to Christy Hall. Because I remember when I read this part of the deposition transcript previously for a different when it was filed as one of the, I think it was the motion for judgment on the pleadings. I was sitting there going, what the hell is Daddy-O? But it turns out that Christy Hall has directed a film called Daddy-O, and she was trying to muscle in to co-direct with Justin. So it wasn't just Blake Lively that was trying to direct the film. Christy Hall was also trying to direct the film, and Justin was like, no, trying to fend off these women from pushing him out of his place, basically. And that is what Alex Sachs is referring to in a rather derogatory way. I find, well, just because Justin has said no, words like manipulate and dismissive are sort of appearing in the text describing this. So stuff like that really irritates me, because at the end of the day, Justin Baldoni was the director of the film. He always was going to be the director of the film. So where either Christy Hall or Blake Lively thought they had any business trying to, take over his directing responsibilities is beyond me. So, but that's just the context of that text. Okay. Do you see that? I do. Do you know who Miss Sachs is referring to here? I could only assume. Who would you assume she's referring to? Well, the director of Daddy-O was our writer, which was Christy Hall. Okay. And so you understand her to be discussing you being very dismissive of Christy Hall. Shapiro objects. I see that Alex is saying that I'm dismissive of her in this text message to Ange Giannetti. Yes. Okay. Do you believe you were dismissive to Christy Hall? Not at all. Do you see at 2:57 p.m. Miss Sachs says, in short, she didn't feel respected as a female voice on the team, and on a movie like this, that felt especially bad. Jesus. Okay, I'm just going to put across an opinion here now. It feels like, and this is what is making me angry, right? But the more I see of this film, right, the more I see that a load of women who are doing quite well in their respective careers already are using a kind of feminist ally man and his company, his feminist ally company, and they are taking advantage of the fact that this film is specifically to put a spotlight on domestic violence issues, women. I don't want to say it's not all, obviously domestic violence is not a woman only problem. But it predominantly is something that is experienced by females. And when you got things like this, and on a movie like this that felt especially bad, well, unless I don't understand the relevance of the fact that it's the movie, like that, this movie is the movie it is, and the themes around it, and it just feels like they were taking advantage of the fact that this was a movie that was supposedly about domestic abuse to be trying to push themselves into positions that they weren't hired for, and then also leveraging the kindness of the men, the feminist ally men who were overseeing this movie, who wanted to, highlight the issue of domestic abuse. And I just find this absolutely wild. I'm really kind of like angry about this, especially because certainly Blake Lively, we know, has not experienced domestic violence, right? She said that herself in an interview, so I can say that with authority here, right? But just, I don't know about Christy Hall. I don't know about Alex Sachs. I don't know about Jenny Slate. I know that Jenny Slate had battered her partner at some point. So, I have deep issues here, but the fact that all these women have been hired for roles in a film, prominent roles in a film, And they are sitting there and they're not content. They are trying to push for more and more and more. But then they're like, "Oh, but yeah, but it's when the director when the man then does push back and try to put in place boundaries, you got them then sending these shitty text messages to each other, talking about how bad it feels that he said no to them, especially in light of this movie. Like, what the fuck is that? What, because the film is focused on a predominantly female issue? Like, you're taking advantage of domestic abuse and the fact that it's, experienced predominantly by women to try and give yourself a leg up in an industry where you're already doing well. And they're just using it as a justification, like this whole, oh, well, a man shouldn't be directing a film about domestic abuse. Are you fucking kidding me? That man probably did far more homework than any of these women combined on domestic abuse. He actually went and spoke to charities and spoke to survivors and, got some actual research done into how to portray this realistically and authentically. I can't. I'm absolutely disgusted, and these women are embarrassing. Okay, now I've said my piece. I've got that off my chest. I just find this absolutely insane that women are doing this, are using victimhood almost, and not necessarily a victimhood they've actually experienced, to gain something from men who don't actually owe them anything. And then when they're told no and boundaries, that the men try to put in boundaries, it's like slagging him off and fake complaints and all this shit. Oh, right. Okay, now I really am done. Okay, Justin, I do see that. Do you see that she also says, she, being Miss Sachs, says of Miss Hall, she's scared of a backlash? Who isn't? I see that. Did you understand one way or another whether Miss Hall felt disrespected as a female voice on the team? Not, I didn't. Not officially until I just read this just now. And you testified earlier that Miss Sachs and Miss Giannetti is who you learned the concerns or complaints, however you describe it, about the hugging, that they were the ones who told you? Shapiro objects. Yes. And that was in May of 2023? I would presume so. Okay. So you see that Miss Giannetti at 2:59 p.m. says, so many things stacking up people are so upset or pissed off about. I cannot believe how they just keep on coming. Do you see that? I do. Is that consistent with your understanding of what was happening as of June 15th, 2024? I don't remember what was happening in June 15th, 2024. Outside of, do you see where Miss Sachs says, I don't think he remembers? Shapiro, I'm sorry, I think you interrupted. Gottlieb, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done. Outside of being isolated and kicked off my own film. Okay. Do you see Miss Sachs says, I think this is where the narcissism is dangerous, and I don't think he remembers honestly or knows that he's doing anything wrong. I see that. Do you agree, Miss Sachs, that you did not remember or knew that you were doing anything wrong? Can I ask what you're referring to? I'm referring to Miss Sachs' words on June 15th, 2024. I can't begin to speculate about what Miss Sachs is referring to when she says, I don't think he remembers honestly or knows that he's doing anything wrong. Do you see at 3:01 p.m. Miss Giannetti says, with this many people and issues, I mean I'm assuming that's they, TGEY, just keep coming. Oh yes. 3:01 p.m. Yes, I do. And then Miss Sachs replies, him and Jamie have a way of making women and some men feel like shit. Do you see that? I mean, that's just kind of killed the argument that they are being misogynistic, or it's a sex-based discrimination or harassment, because they have just said, and some men. Do you see that? I see that. And she says, it is deep because they sign the checks. Do you see that? I do. And by sign the checks, she's referring to Wayfarer Studios paying for people's compensation on the film It Ends With Us, right? Shapiro objects. I can't assume. I'm not on this text chain. Who did sign the checks? Not myself. Did Wayfarer Studios pay for people's salaries compensation on the film It Ends With Us? I would imagine so. And you, as the director and co-studio head, had the authority to hire, fire, remove, and discipline people on the set if you chose to do so. Shapiro objects. Justin, yes. And then you see a reference at 3:05 p.m. by Miss Sachs saying, "Do you remember when I called Andy Davis a few weeks in and he was like, Andy, he's inviting the department heads to go to Russian baths with him." Do you see that? Yes. Who is Andy Davis? I believe Andy Davis he might be the head of production at Sony Studios. Okay. And on the next, the person in charge of production at Sony. All right. And on the next page, Miss Sachs says, I was like, what do I do? He was like, you have to tell him he can't do that. Everyone has something weird, uncomfortable, and bad to say. Do you see that? Yes, I see Ange says that, yes. Sorry, Ange said that. Everybody has something weird, uncomfortable, and bad to say. Yes. Did Miss Sachs tell you that you weren't allowed to take people to Russian baths? No, she didn't. Did anyone tell you? No, she didn't. Did Miss Giannetti ever tell you that many people had something weird or uncomfortable or bad to say about what was happening on the film? No, she didn't. Did anyone? Shapiro objects. Not until I read about them like this. Are you sorry. Are you troubled reading this now? Shapiro objects. What do you mean by troubled? What would you have done if this had been handled? What would you have done if you had been handed this text chain on June 15th, 2024, between Alex Sachs? Alex Sachs was the producer on the film, right? Yes. And Ange Giannetti was the executive in charge for Sony. So if you'd known on June 15th, 2024, that in Miss Giannetti's view, that everyone has something weird, uncomfortable, and bad to say about what was happening on your set, what would you have done? Shapiro objects. On June 15th, the movie was already finished, and I believe anything that's referenced in this text exchange, if I'm not mistaken, either happened before the movie began, as it relates to what you said about Christy Hall, or in pre-production, but I could be wrong. What would you have done recognizing that on June 15th, 2024, if you had seen this? I mean, he just said... Shapiro objects. Justin, I can't speculate to what I would have done on June 15th because I didn't see it. Would it have changed anything about what you did after June 15th, 2024? Shapiro objects. I can't answer that. Who is Russell? Do you see a reference to Russell at 3:07 p.m.? I do. Who is Russell? Russell was our production designer. Do you see that Miss Sachs says Russell said when he rapped he felt like he'd left a cult? I do see that. Do you find that offensive? Shapiro objects. It wouldn't be the first time people around this case have said that I was in a cult. I think you testified earlier about meetings with Miss Lively that occurred in her apartment. Is that right? Yes. Is this the first place that you met with Miss Lively? The first place, it was in the same building, yes. In the same apartment building? In the building. Different room, but same building? Different apartment. Different apartment, same building? Oh my God. Yes. Okay. Am I done with this? Sure. When was that meeting? The first meeting? Sometime in December before Christmas. Sorry, I think it was December 22nd. And when you first met with Miss Lively, she had not yet agreed to play the role of Lily in the film. Is that right? Yes. And you had not yet decided whether you were sure if you wanted her to play the role of Lily in the film, correct? Correct. And you thought you did, though, right? Objection. I thought I did what? When you went to that meeting, traveled to the meeting? Yes. You prepared for the meeting? Yes. And you discussed the meeting in advance with certain people? Yes. Like Mr. Heath? Yes. And others? Justin just nods his head at this point. And it's fair to say that you were hopeful that you and Miss Lively could reach an understanding and she would agree to play the role of Lily in the film. Objection. Yes. At that point in time, you had made a decision that, along with directing the film, you would play the co-lead in the film. Yes. Is that the role of Ryle? Yes. And before I asked if you were a producer and you said no. You're an executive producer, is that correct? Yes. Okay. I was, but eventually I wasn't. You were for some period of time? Yes. Okay. In the first meeting, along with other topics, you and Miss Lively discussed your families, is that right? Yes. And at the time, Miss Lively was pregnant. Very pregnant, yes. She was soon to give birth. Yes. And that would not be the first time Miss Lively had children already, right? Yes, they were all over the apartment. Well, yes, they were all over the apartment. Oh, that makes them sound like she's got a herd of children. And Miss Lively was pregnant with a boy. Is that right? Yes. And the two of you discussed certain things about Miss Lively's baby? Shapiro objects. Unborn baby? Yes. Among other things, you discussed whether Miss Lively's baby would be circumcised, right? Shapiro objects. That was a conversation, yes. And in the context of that conversation, did you at any point share with Miss Lively whether you were circumcised? Yes. Did Miss Lively ask you whether you were circumcised? Directly, no. None of this appeared in her complaint or CRD. Who was present at the moment when you relayed to Miss Lively that you were circumcised? There were people going all around. Mr. Reynolds was in and out of the conversation. She had, I think, 2 nannies, despite the fact that she's swore blind. She never uses nannies. I felt like there was a housekeeper there. Her assistant was walking around. I think she had 2 assistants there. Her and I were sitting on the couch, but there were people all around. Have you ever told any other work colleague at any point in time about your genitalia? Shapiro objects. Justin, I don't talk about my genitalia, so no. Prior to Miss Lively accepting the role of Lily Bloom, she received a copy of the script. Is that right? Yes. And you did not write that script, is that correct? Shapiro objects. Correct. I developed it with Christy Hall. Christy Hall was the screenwriter? Yes. Do you recall when that script was sent to Miss Lively? I assume before the meeting. Do you know whether the script that Miss Lively received before the meeting and prior to when she accepted the role of Lily Bloom was the same script that was used once you started shooting? It certainly was not. Okay. Did you have an understanding prior to the start of production whether the issue of nudity or sex scenes was important in any respect to Miss Lively? Shapiro objects. Can you say that one? Repeat the question. Did you have an understanding prior to the start of production whether the issue of nudity or sex scenes were important in any respect to Miss Lively? Objection. I knew that Miss Lively felt that the movie needed to be very sexy. But outside of that, Can you repeat the question one more time? I want to make sure I answer it correctly. Did you have an understanding prior to the start of production whether the issue of nudity or sex scenes were important in any respect to Miss Lively? Objection. Prior to the start of production, not... Okay. Prior to the start of principal photography, yes. Okay. And in fact, I think you know that Miss Lively had a series of conditions or principles in negotiating her offer that related to nudity or sex scenes. Objection. Do you know that? And then there's another objection. My voice is really going. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to cough. Are you referring to the nudity rider? Do you know anything about what Miss Lively negotiated into her agreement prior to signing on to the role of Lily Bloom in the film relating to sex scenes or nudity? I'm aware of specific demands or requests as it relates to a document in, I believe, November, but that was after we had started filming. Are you meaning before principal photography began? Do you recall Mr. Heath ever sending you in December of 2022 changes that Miss Lively had made to her agreement relating to the role of Lily Bloom in It Ends With Us? No. All right. So as you sit here today, you don't have a recollection one way or another of whether Miss Lively negotiated or otherwise insisted on certain conditions relating to nudity or sex scenes in the film. In December of 2022, I don't recall. Okay, we're going to mark Exhibit 23. Exhibit 23, Mr. Baldoni, please take a look through. And while you're looking through the record, I will note that Exhibit 23 is a document which is an email exchange with an attachment. Once you've had a chance to look, I will ask you some questions about it. Thank you. Have you taken a few minutes to look over this document, Mr. Baldoni? I have. And Exhibit 23 is an email and attachment that Mr. Heath sent to you on December 23rd, 2022. Is that correct? Exhibit 23 looks like an email from Lindsay Strasberg. You see the very top of the page there? Oh, yes. And do you see how it has a subject that says, forward, Blake Lively, it ends with us, the role of Lily? Yes. And that forward at the top of the page is something that, got it, I understand now. Mr. Heath, yes. So this is a document that Mr. Heath sent to you on December 23rd, 2022. Apparently, yes. Okay, and Mr. Heath has forwarded you the markup of the agreement from Miss Lively's team relating to the role of Lily Bloom on It Ends With Us. Yes. Okay, and in that markup, a few things. Do you notice how on the page marked 26089, which is page 2 of the agreement, there is a section that's titled Approvals. Do you see that? Sorry, where is it again? It's on the page that is page 2 of the markup agreement. It says 26089 in the bottom right hand corner. There is a section that says Travel. Yes. And right under Travel, you see Approvals. Yes. And you see that it says in the marked up version, artists will have mutual approval rights over the following. Then there's a subpoint A about hair, and then there's a subpoint B that's been edited to say simply the screenplay. Do you see that? Yes. And so it was important to Miss Lively, in this agreement at least, as it's been expressed here on December 23rd, that she would have mutual approval rights over the screenplay. Do you see that? Shapiro objects. I see what I believe is the first round of markups and negotiations from Miss Lively's side. Okay. Because I also see it says produced by credit on screen. So to me, it looks like this was the first round of everything. It's like the wish list of everything that her team would want. Okay, and do you have an understanding of whether Miss Lively's ultimate agreement with Wayfarer included mutual approval rights over the screenplay? Shapiro objects. I imagine it would. Then on the next page, section 13, you see a number of items under miscellaneous. Yes. And this is on page 3 of the markup agreement, which is Baldoni 26090. Do you see how Miss Lively's team has written in here, subpoint A? No use of the artist's name, voice, or likeness in the merchandise. And then other things hit there without prior written consent. Yes. Does that seem like a fairly standard provision that goes into these kinds of agreements? Shapiro objects. Justin, I would imagine so. In your experience, is that a fairly standard provision that an actor would ask for? Objection. I can't speculate. I'm not an expert in contracts. Something that would be important to you in one of your agreements? Objection. No use of artist's name, voice, or likeness in merchandising without my consent? Yes? Yes. Okay. You see subsection D, approval of press releases and statements? Yes? Is that something that would also be important to you in a film you were co-lead in? I'm not sure I have ever asked for that or thought that I could have that, but again, I can't speculate. And I also, do you have the final contract by chance? I'm asking you about this document right now, sir. So it's not the final contract. Okay. Do you see how in subsection E it's written in no nudity / simulated sex without artist's prior written consent and negotiation / execution of a nudity rider? Do you see that? Very standard, yes. That's very standard, yes. Okay, and you understood Miss Lively to be asking for that as of December 23rd, 2022. Looking at this document, I understand that to be a being asked for it by her team, along with all of the other things that were asked for here in red. Okay, let's do that, please. This is Exhibit 24. It's thankfully a short one. Mr. Baldoni, you've been handed what has been marked as Exhibit 24, which is a document that's an email from Alex Sachs to yourself, Jamie Heath, and Angie Giannetti, with copies to others on March 28th, 2023. Subject line, sex scene / nudity meeting. Yes. Have you had a chance to look at this? This I have, yes. Okay. It's helpful that it's only 2 sentences. It is. So Ms. Sachs writes, and this is an email Ms. Sachs sent to you, Jamie Heath, and Angie Giannetti on March 28, 2023. It appears to be. Ms. Sachs reads, can the 4 of us hop on to discuss the above in regard to Blake specifically in the next couple of days? Is that right? Yes. And the above is the subject line, sex scene nudity meeting. Yes? Do you understand what Miss Sachs was referring to or talking about in this email to you? I don't. Do you have any idea whether any such discussion happened around March 28th, 2023? I remember there were many conversations trying to have these conversations. I don't remember specifically when it happened. Okay. Do you have a recollection of a conversation about sex scenes or nudity happening at some point towards the end of March, start of April 2023? I remember a few conversations, yes. Okay, do you remember a few conversations with Miss Sachs, Miss Giannetti, and any of the other people referenced here on this email? Yes. Superior objects. Okay, were those meetings that you recall, and as you sit here today, in person, on the phone, Zoom, what do you recall? Superior objects. I don't recall. I know we were in pre-production, so I think by this point we were in the office. So some may have been in person, some may have been Zoom. Okay. You testified earlier about an initial meeting you had with Miss Lively in December of 2022. This is now the end of March 2023. Had you been working on edits to the script in between December of 2022 and March of 2023? Yes, per Sony's direction. How many different drafts of the script would you estimate you had gone through between the end of December 2022 and this point in March of 2023? I have no idea. If we wanted to know the answer to that question, would there be an answer contained in a digital form in any program or software that you all used for managing changes to the script? Shapiro objects. I'm not a technical expert in Final Draft. I imagine it would be in when I gave my laptop and phone and everything to the data people for the lawsuit. What program did you use for writing or making edits to the script? Final Draft. And in that program, did you ever have occasion to go back and look at prior drafts to compare kind of where you were and where you'd been? Shapiro objects. I believe so. Yeah, I had to learn Final Draft. And do you recall in Final Draft there being a function for notes and ways of indicating where changes had been made? Yes. How? To the best of your recollection, as you sit here today, how do you know, looking at a script in Final Draft, where changes had been made from the last draft? You would have, I think, the option to, like, as you type something in, it keeps what was there before, and I think it puts a strike through it. So I think he's talking about red lines. There were stars on the side. There were stars on the side when it gets exported in, like, the final, like, the final export. Wherever you send out to, yeah, because I wouldn't want it to have the strikes because that would be confusing. It would be too much dialogue. Okay, so when you edit a script in this program and then you send it out for other people to review, the way that I would know if I were reviewing your new draft where changes had been made is that there would be stars. Shapiro objects on the side. Shapiro objects. Justin, correct. Okay, let's take a look at one example of that, and this will be Exhibit 25. And Mr. Baldoni, I'm going to say this now before handing this to you because this is a script of the entire movie. You don't want me to read the whole script. I'm not going to ask you to do a table read. Justin, there you go. Thanks. So that was the stenographer said thanks. Gottlieb. So Exhibit 25 is a document bearing Bates number, and I'm right, Mr. Baldoni, that this is a version of the script that has been sent from someone to you on or about April 10th, 2023. It appears so. What's the official clean white production draft? I think white is the first color that you would have when you start to prep a movie. Okay, and do you know who sent this to you from the production office? Whoever was handling distribution. Okay, so this is April 10th. Do you have any estimate or any recollection at all as you sit here today of how many different drafts the script had gone through from December of 2022 until this point in April of 2023? Official drafts, I don't believe any official drafts. Any drafts that had been saved on the system as a new draft? I couldn't estimate. Is it fair to say that you were tinkering with the script often during that period of time? Shapiro objects. Tinkering wouldn't be the word I use. Revising? I was revising, sure. You were making edits, and I think you said earlier in conjunction with Sony, in conjunction with the producers and also the writer, Christy Hall. Okay. I want to direct your attention to page 47 of the script, which is the page marked with Bates number 3690. Okay. On page 47, I believe we were in scene 39, and there is a description at the bottom of the page of a bedroom scene. Do you see where I am? Yes. And do you see in that description of a bedroom scene a description of a sex scene between the characters Ryle and Lily? Yes. What part of the movie is this? Shapiro objects. This is the beginning of their romance, I believe. This is right as they are falling in love on screen. Did you write the words that appear from the bolded bedroom to the end of the page where you have an italicized these nearly two formed lovers, then italicized become one? I don't believe I did. Who do you believe wrote that? I believe those were Christy Hall's words. All 3 paragraphs? I'm sure that I adjusted some words. This, to me, my memory of this is it was written and feels like Christy Hall's writing. Do you know one way or another, as you sit here today, whether this description of a bedroom scene between Ryle and Lily was in the script that was sent to Miss Lively in December of 2022? My recollection is that many of the intimate scenes were worked on since the first draft that Miss Lively had. So that would be a no with respect to this scene. I mean, that's not what he said. Shapiro objects. Justin, I don't know specifically this scene, if it was in the script or not. So your recollection is that many of the intimate scenes were worked on since the first draft sent to Miss Lively in 2022, but you're not certain whether this was one of those scenes. Shapiro objects. Justin, no, I believe I was answering your question about whether this scene was in the initial script or not. Okay, that's all? So yes or no, was that it? That's what I said, is I don't know if it was in the initial script. Okay, but then in response to it, you also said that my recollection is that many of the intimate scenes were worked on since the first draft that Miss Lively had. Correct. So you're saying that many of the intimate scenes that were in the script, yes, that Miss Lively saw in December of 2022 were scenes that you were working on in between December of 2022 and April of 2023. Correct. Shapiro objects. Okay. Were you working on those scenes with Miss Lively at that time? No, I wasn't. Okay. Were you were working on them with Miss Hall? Miss Hall, Alex Sachs, Andrew Kaloff, Ange Giannetti, Jamie Heath. Okay. If you turn one page to page 49, you see scene 42, Boston Grace Hotel, hallway, neurosurgery, floor. You see that? Uh-huh. And do you see a discussion of a scene at the hospital when Lily comes to see Ryle? Yes. And there is an exchange there in dialogue where Lily says, "Hello there, doctor." Ryle says, "Hey, I didn't expect to see you today." And Lily, coy, sexy, says, "Yeah, well, I think I need a physical. Maybe you can help me out." Do you see that? Yes. Did you write that? I did not. Who wrote that? This was specifically an idea that Christy Hall had when we were meeting together over 2 days in my office at Wayfarer. Do you think that it was a good idea? I think I did at the time. That's probably why it's in the script. Did you ever change your mind about that? Change my mind about putting it in the script, or that it was a good idea? That it was a good idea. I'm not sure. I don't believe Miss Lively liked it, and so we took it out. Is there anybody else who didn't like it? I don't understand the big issue that's been made here with a script that was written by a woman. And he's like, "Justin, you, the man. Did you like it? Did you think it was a good idea?" And then you get to the point where they're like, he says, "Well, Miss Lively didn't like it, so we took it out." So what's the problem here? This is just so irritating. Is there anybody else who didn't like it? I don't recall. I feel like it made the script because people liked it that I was collaborating with. What did you like about this? Oh, for fuck's sake. Shapiro objects about the scene, about that dialogue. Oh, well, I can't comment on the dialogue. The dialogue is much of the dialogue, like, this is always a work in progress. Until an actress says it out loud, you don't know if it works. But to answer your question, specifically, there was a request from Sony to add more sexy to the movie, and we were constantly looking for ways to do it that also fit into the budget because we had location constraints, time constraints. We could only be in certain places at certain times. As I remember, this specific instance was a little bit of the tail wagging the dog because we were having to pay a lot of money to rent out a hospital, and there weren't enough scenes to shoot at the hospital. And so, as producers do, and as a director does, we are trying to figure out how to give the co-studio the notes that they want, which are, as an example, adding a sexy scene to help their relationship, and also the budget constraints of having enough to shoot in a hospital. So when you put those two things together, I believe Christy had a great idea of, oh, maybe there is this, like, maybe she should play the doctor, And as I often did, she's a woman. She's a brilliant writer. I'm not going to argue with her of what is sexy or not, because I wanted this to be from that gaze anyways. So I thought it was perfectly fine. I will only also add that we were also constantly going back to the book to figure out how to adapt it in a way that made Ryle and Lily's relationship more sexual and Atlas and Lily's relationship more romantic, because we wanted them to be two very different situations. So there was a lot more talk about making sure that there was more Ryle and Lily, because in the book, by the time they get together, there is a lot more sexual interaction between the two. And we just didn't have nearly enough in the movie. Is there a scene in the book that involves Ryle and Lily playing doctor in the hospital and then having sex in an exam room? No. And I think your testimony was it was a good idea to add this because it made good use of the amount that the studio was paying for the hospital for production. Shapiro objects. I don't believe that was my testimony. Would adding a sex scene not in the book be considered gratuitous? Objection. No, because none of the sex scenes that were in the movie as they currently exist were ever in the book in the way that they are. Also, artistic license. Gottlieb. If you flip to page 81 of the script, are you there with me, sir? Yes. Do you see A69? Yes. And that is a reference to Aria Hotel Penthouse Suite night? Yes. And this is a wedding night for Brian and Lily? Yes. And you see towards the end of that, as it's written, as the two climax at the same time, they lock eyes and cannot help but smile, baffled that they found each other. Yes. Whose idea was it to add the two climax at the same time? Oh my god. Christy Hall. When did she communicate that to you? We were writing together. We were in a room in my office. We were specifically working on a lot of the sex scenes and sorry, go ahead. And we were writing a movie that was filled with romance and lust and intimacy and sex. And again, these are all outlines, right? So a script has far less description than a book. So it ends with us, which has a ton of pages and very detailed descriptions of various scenes so that you can paint the picture in your mind. And all writers do, which I learned a lot on this process, is that you have to give some sort of outline so that as you are reading the script, you have an idea of what's happening. And then you work out all the details once you start production, both with the actress in accordance with what is standard for approval, and then after the actress with the intimacy coordinators to figure out what each of those things really mean. Did you ever have a conversation with anyone else, cast, crew, production, on It Ends With Us about Lily and Ryle climaxing together other than Christy Hall? I think I spoke about every single intimate sex scene with our intimacy coordinator. Okay, so Miss Hall, your intimacy coordinator, and then eventually Miss Lively? Okay, and then Miss Lively. Yes. Do you recall having a conversation with Miss Lively about this specific line here? I don't recall it being about this specific line. Do you have any recollection of having a conversation with Miss Lively about the scene in which you discussed you and your wife? Objection. I remember a conversation, not discussing a scene, where I brought up my wife, yes. And what do you recall bringing up? The day before I had a meeting with the intimacy coordinator to go over ideas for all of these scenes, I wrote down a bunch of notes from that meeting. The following day, I had a meeting set with Miss Lively to specifically talk about the sex scenes. That was the actual point of the meeting. In that meeting, I read through and walked through the notes that I had discussed with the intimacy coordinator. One of them was the idea that had come up where Ryle and Lily were making love. Lily had climaxed or had an orgasm, to speak frankly here, and Ryle did not. And the idea, as the intimacy coordinator and I were talking about things that women have not seen on camera yet, things that would be unique, that would be attractive to the female gaze, which was the purpose of that meeting. The idea was that Ryle would then stop and say, just watching you was enough, or I'm good, or something like that. When I shared that with Miss Lively, she then made it personal and said, oh God, that would mortify me if it happened to me. To which I then responded, as one does when you're two grown adults with children who are married, in the context of talking about sex scenes with a movie that you're making with a person who is understanding that there are going to be sex scenes in a book based with a lot of sex in them. The only thing you really have to share are personal experiences. So I said, oh, well, some of the most beautiful moments have been when that's happened with me and my wife, and that was it. He sounds really frustrated at that. So you were interested in shooting the scene from the female gaze. I was interested in shooting all the sex scenes from the female gaze. Did Miss Lively have a female gaze? What? I would imagine so if she's female. Did you believe she had one? Of course. Did you believe that gaze was important in incorporating ideas about how these various scenes would be shot? Shapiro objects. Absolutely. That's why I incorporated all of Miss Lively's ideas without hesitation. And it's your testimony that when you say Miss Lively said she would be mortified, that you believe she was referring to? If that happened to her, were her words. If that happened to her in her personal life, yes, it was a personal comment. Like, it was inferring that if She was inferring that if her husband didn't finish, if she didn't finish her husband or climax her husband, that she would be mortified. Oh God. That's what she said. So she said, "Oh, that would mortify me if it happened to me." Your recollection as you sit here today about a meeting that occurred in April of 2023? Shapiro objects. I would imagine that's the date. Okay. Your recollection is that you specifically recall Miss Lively saying about herself personally she would be mortified if the events described in the scene happened to her in her personal life. Shapiro objects. Yes. That's why I then shared what I shared. That was a very normal thing for Miss Lively. You're two adults, two professionals, having a conversation, and one of the only things you have is your personal experience. So I didn't think anything of it. Did you ever tell Miss Lively that Christy Hall was working with you on drafts of the script in April of 2023? My recollection, bless you, someone must have sneezed. My recollection is that Miss Lively was on spring break and I don't think we were in that much communication, but I don't know. So you don't know if you ever told Miss Lively that one way or another? I imagine I did because I oftentimes told her I'm not a writer and I was kind of in this position where I was having to write. Okay, you imagine you did. But earlier we talked about your recollection that matters. So do you have a recollection? I don't have a specific recollection of a conversation where I said to Miss Lively that Christy was helping me. Okay, but you did tell her that you had worked on ideas for these scenes with an intimacy coordinator? That was the entire context of the meeting we had at her place. And who was the intimacy coordinator? Lizzie Talbot. Did you read Miss Talbot's deposition transcript in this case? No. Have you ever talked to Miss Talbot about her recollection of any of the events relating to the script or production in this case? No. Gottlieb. Okay, I think it's about lunchtime. Why didn't we go off the record? So, and then they come back, and I'm going to wrap up at the end of this anyway. Move on to part 10 because we're nearly at an hour. Are we nearly at an hour? Yeah, close enough. Okay. Gottlieb. Did there come a time in May of 2023 where you learned that Jenny Slate and Miss Lively had made concerns known regarding comments that you had made on the set? In May of 2023? I believe so, yes. Who told you about Miss Slate and Miss Lively's concerns? Ange Giannetti? Alex Sachs? Sorry, I don't know what that was. Separately or together? Separate conversations. With Miss Giannetti, was that conversation in person? No. On the phone? Yes. Okay, and then I'm going to stop now and I'll continue with part 10.